Before solo artists dominated hip-hop groups dominated the genre, and many of today's most famous solo hip-hop artists started their careers by being in a group. As hip-hop spread in popularity across the nation, more groups served us different regional sounds and styles. For example, the West Coast, East Coast, and the South had distinct sounds. Hip-hop fans were definitely spoiled back then with how many talented groups there were, releasing some of the most iconic albums of all time. However, one group in particular completely took over the 90s and exemplified how group harmony, sound, and most importantly style earned them major success and recognition: Bone Thugs and Harmony. In this video, I'm going to do an analysis on one of my favorite albums of all time, which also happens to be the first album I ever listened to, ever, at a very, very young age. Bone Thugs and Harmony's The Art of War. Before I begin this video, I do want to acknowledge that I am aware of the whole who started what first and style-biting beef in relation to 3 6 Mafia and other groups. I will make some mentions throughout the video to this conflict simply because a lot of this album is in response to or hints to the beef that was happening between Bone Thugs and those artists at the time. But this video isn't specifically about Bone Thugs versus 3 6 or any other beef at all. It's an analysis on the Art of War album. I do recommend watching videos or reading up on the beef just for context. It is quite interesting, and 3 6 Mafia weren't the only group that Bone Thugs had problems with. Also, some of the best diss tracks to ever come out in hip-hop were directed towards or from Bone Thugs and Harmony. I'm going to put some links to other creators' videos on this topic if anyone is interested, as well as some of my favorite diss tracks. Now that we got that out of the way, let's get on to the analysis. Bone Thugs and Harmony formed in Cleveland, Ohio around 1993. The group is comprised of 5 members with signature stage names: Crazy Bone, Busy Bone, Lazy Bone, Wishbone, and Flesh and Bone. The group initially called themselves the Band-Aid Boys, including only Crazy Bone, Lazy Bone, Flesh and Bone, and a former member named K Chill. K Chill eventually left, and Busy Bone and Wishbone joined afterwards. The group rebranded to Bone Enterprise before releasing their debut album Faces of Death. The group faced difficulties getting their name and talent out as the music scene in Cleveland wasn't very lucrative. So they got on a Greyhound bus to LA, where they would call NWA's Eazy-E's record label, Ruthless Records, every single day until they finally got in touch and auditioned over the phone. They didn't really receive a clear answer from Eazy, but luckily they found out he was going to perform back in Cleveland. So the boys went back to audition to him in person. Once they did, Eazy was impressed and took them back to LA to record and release their first EP under Ruthless, Creeping on a Come Up, in 1994, which included their breakout hits Thuggish Ruggish Bone and For the Love of Money. However, in March of '95, Eazy-E passed away. The passing of Eazy-E wasn't easy and caused some friction between Bone Thugs, particularly with Busy Bone and Ruthless Records, as the management of the label passed on to Tamika Wright. Despite the changes, the group released their critically acclaimed album East 99 Eternal. The album debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200 and is famously known for its Grammy Award-winning single Crossroads, which went double platinum and made history as it tied with the Beatles for the fastest rising pop single on the charts. East 99 Eternal shot the group to insane amounts of success, and Crossroads was almost inescapable from being heard everywhere. Until this day, Crossroads and First of the Month are still well known and trend frequently on social media. Following East 99 Eternal, Bone Thugs released The Art of War in July of '97. At the time of its release, hip-hop was dwindling down from its gangster rap and West Coast dominance era. This shift was primarily due to the passing of so many rappers, notably Tupac and Biggie. Their deaths definitely gave a perspective shift to gangster rap, choosing sides, and how the media was influencing people's behaviors in relation to the genre. The mid to late 90s was also when hip-hop was becoming increasingly commercial. For example, in '97, the charts were mainly dominated by P. Diddy and his hedonistic, flashy aesthetics, with lyrics focused on materialism and catchy phrases/sounds. Will Smith released Getting Jiggy With It around the end of '97, so you can kind of see how hip-hop was changing. There was definitely more emphasis on radio play, mass appeal, and making people dance. Obviously, albums were still being released that didn't focus on dance or pop rap styles. In response to the amount of loss that happened in hip-hop and the tarnishing of the genre's name from the media during the gangster rap era, many artists released albums more on the introspective side of hip-hop, focusing on culture, community, conflict, and of course, grief. Bone Thugs and Harmony's The Art of War is definitely one of those albums. After its release, the album went quadruple platinum, selling almost 400,000 copies in its first week, and debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200. Produced by DJ Unique, the album overall has a dark tone dominated by minor piano scales. It's embellished with signature West Coast synths, gunshots, and some G-funk as well. Some of the songs are completely melodic, giving the audience some variety across the tracks. Notable samples include the Friday the 13th original theme soundtrack in Thug Love, Isaac Hayes, Diana Ross, Luther Vandross, Boogie Down Productions, and MC Lyte. The Art of War is quite a lengthy album. It's a double LP with 28 tracks. Even to today's standards, that's a lot of songs on one album. Prior to this album, Tupac's All Eyes on Me, Biggie's Life After Death, and Wu-Tang's Wu-Tang Forever were all double LPs released in hip-hop, but they were still not as long as The Art of War. When asked why the group released a double LP, Crazy Bone explained in a 1998 Planet Groove interview that there were a lot of things going on in the members' lives, and the group was facing a lot of changes that they felt needed to be expressed through their songs. It had also been 2 years since they released East 99 Eternal, and throughout that time, the members were dealing with a lot of problems with Ruthless Records, their personal lives, run-ins with the law, and as mentioned before, there was beef brewing between Bone Thugs and Memphis/Chicago rappers who thought that Bone were stealing their sound and style. Before I talk about the themes of The Art of War, let's discuss a little bit about what Bone Thugs and Harmony's distinct style and sound is. Bone Thugs and Harmony's legendary success is linked to their unique sound that no other group in hip-hop was doing in the early to mid-90s. They fused chopper rap, also called speed rapping, with harmonization, delivering bars rhythmically by dragging out words, emphasizing vowels, or seamlessly transitioning from rapping into singing. If you think about the late 90s, when catchy phrases, melodies, and featuring R&B hooks were popular, Bone Thugs and Harmony's style of combining gangster rap type lyrics with harmonies and singing was a winning combination that appealed to fans across both hip-hop and the R&B genres. The members explained they developed their style naturally from having known each other for so long. Growing up together in Cleveland, they would regularly engage in ciphers or raps, and while doing so would pick up on each other's specific styles and strengths. When one member would rap, another would join in to provide ad-libs, and then another would, eventually leading them to harmonizing with each other. They also emphasized their desire and appeal to having constant flow, which is why their raps were so chopped and included an extreme amount of syllables. Rather than ending their bars on the end of a beat to add emphasis to a lyric, they would keep their flow going, entering into melodic rhythms, and instead use harmonies as a stylistic focal point to their songs. Lyrically, Bone Thugs often reflected on the harsh realities of growing up in Cleveland, touching on poverty, violence, crime, drugs, police brutality, and death. Because of this, many people consider Bone Thugs and Harmony to be a part of the horrorcore subgenre. Personally, I think they're more on the spectrum of horrorcore. A lot of their lyrics, especially when they harmonize or sing together, have to do with faith, spirituality, and religion. But I will admit, there are times where they sing or harmonize together in ways that make their songs sound more eerie and ominous, building tension and keeping their listeners on edge while they rapped about uncomfortable topics. In a 1997 Source magazine interview, Crazy explained that all of our albums have a dark feeling to them, but it is so smooth that you don't really focus on the dark too much. The dark themes come from how we used to live. Then, every day and every night was dark in our eyes. Bone Thugs are masters at matching their flow and style to their lyrics. When they rap about dark themes of death, violence, and crime, they use chopper rap, increasing the speed and intensity of their songs, audibly bringing to life the chaotic and erratic feelings of what it's like to live a thug lifestyle in Cleveland. When switching to harmonies, their music takes a religious, introspective, and faithful turn, showing their listeners another side of them that perseveres through struggles and difficulties. This is why lyrical style is so important in relation to identity. The West Coast has a signature style, so does the East and the South, and those styles are representative of the cultures and experiences for those artists that live in those regions. The style that Bone Thugs naturally developed over time as a group, in conjunction with their lyrical themes, is a direct reflection of their life, feelings, experiences, culture, and upbringing in Cleveland. If we want to quickly compare this to 3 6 Mafia, for example, their signature style reflects the party culture of Memphis, Tennessee. 3 6 Mafia do harmonize to a degree, but not so much to the point where they would sing together like Bone Thugs, which is what I believe is a major differentiator between both groups. 3 6's harmonies are more chant-like, designed to energize their club audiences and hype up a crowd. Because lyrical style is so deeply tied to identity and representation, it's easy to see why this topic was so significant during Bone Thugs' come up. It wasn't about owning a style per se, but but representing the cultures, experiences, and upbringings of these artists in their cities. Hip-hop was always either West or East Coast, so the Midwest and South had a harder time gaining recognition for their innovative styles. When Bone Thugs received major success and put Cleveland on the map, it's no surprise they were met with opposition by other artists who felt like they had similar styles and wanted equal representation. This now leads us to the major themes of the Art of War album. The Art of War is an album about how to navigate the battles of life, which includes poverty, violence, crime, and most importantly, hate. These themes weren't just conceptual, it mirrored the real-life challenges that Bone Thugs were facing during this era. Wishbone explained the album perfectly in the Art of War tour video.
The Art of War is like basically our way of telling the world, you know what I'm saying? It's like our book on how to deal with life, you know what I'm saying? It's like everything is a war, you know what I'm saying? So, because don't nobody agree on nothing. So, you know what I'm saying? It's like a battle, a constant battle, life, you know what I'm saying? Like, certain people say we too hard, you know what I'm saying? There's some people cool with it, you know what I'm saying? That's a battle right there just to get our point across. That's a war, you know what I'm saying? It just, every aspect of the whole life is just a war, you know what I'm saying? We ain't just physically meaning like, you got to be whooping somebody's ass or somebody got to be getting shot, even though that's reality too. You know what I'm saying? We are talking about that too, but that's not the only art of war to us, you know what I'm saying? Not the only form of battle. All about the message to us, you know what I'm saying? We really want people to know things and, you know what I'm saying, express ourselves to people.
I found it interesting that Wishbone explained the Art of War as Bone's book on how to deal with life, especially considering that the album shares the same title of Sun Tzu's very famous The Art of War. This is confirmed in the 97 Source magazine interview, which revealed that Bone read the book and were intrigued by the idea of fighting without fighting. Referencing books is very common in hip-hop. I was introduced to a lot of nonfiction, philosophical, and political books just by listening to 80s and 90s hip-hop in particular, and that was also how I found out about Sun Tzu's The Art of War. Sun Tzu's The Art of War was written in the 5th century BC as a manual to teach people about war strategy. This book is extremely influential and is used in many different contexts outside of actual warfare, including business, sports, delegations with other people, and of course within media, especially in hip-hop. After rereading The Art of War, I found 3 main lessons that related perfectly back to the central themes in Bone Thugs and Harmony's The Art of War, especially in relation to fighting without fighting. The first lesson, and probably the most important, is number 1, to know yourself and your enemy. If you do, no matter what, you can't lose. This also includes knowing where you and your enemies come from. A major theme throughout Bone Thugs' The Art of War is about Bone Thugs and Harmony's identity. They storytell their experiences, their upbringing, and redefine the idea of what it means to be a thug. The definition of being a thug is something that Bone have focused on since their debut, so much so that they turned the word into an acronym for True's Humbly United Gathering Souls. In an article written for The Plain Dealer in August of '97, Lazy's definition for a thug is a person who goes through everyday life, who deals with the good and bad, and comes out on the top of the good side. Bone Thugs really wanted their audiences to understand that being a thug isn't all negative, proving that thugs do what they have to do to survive in situations made against them, and even through tough challenges, they still keep their faith in God. This narrative is also reflected in their sound and style. Bone Thugs songs are typically fast-paced, complex, and dark, but are also balanced out with moments of reflection, faith, and hope. When Bone Thugs describe who they are and tell their stories, they are literally doing what Sun Tzu recommends, knowing themselves, being authentic to who they are and their experiences. None of their lyrics involve proving themselves through wealth or status symbols, but rather staying true to who they are and where they come from. And Bone Thugs did this a lot. An overarching lyrical motif across all their music is street life and bringing things back to their hometown, Cleveland, Ohio. By defining who they are, they separate themselves from who they aren't. Literally communicating to their haters, this is what we do and why we do it and why you ain't Bone, proving that their sound and style is a product of their upbringing and identity. Songs that relate to this theme / lesson are It's All Mo Thug, Ain't Nothing Changed, Clog Up Your Mind, It's All Real, Family Tree, Get Your Thug On, and How Many of Us Have Them. Lesson 2, and this sounds a bit contradictory, is to avoid conflict and not fight in a war at all. Bone Thugs also demonstrated the art of war by never engaging in any of the beef they had through name dropping. Do or Die and Cruise crucial conflict do somewhat get mentioned, but in a really stealthy way. For example, Lazy Bone's verse in You Ain't Bone, and Majesty's verse in Ready for War, which references Crucial Conflict's song Hey and Ride the Rodeo. But otherwise, every other mention to the beef is pretty vague and can honestly be about anyone. Instead of charging into full-on conflict, Bone decided to sneak diss in almost every single track on The Art of War. This wasn't just limited to songs, but also interviews. Bone Thugs always dismissed or handled any questions about style biting and other artists in a very controlled and professional manner. If we combine this lesson with the previous one, Bone Thugs are literally genius in how they strategically responded to this beef. Knowing who they are and how much success they received after East 99 Eternal, they knew that they had the public listening to them and a dedicated fan base. So why would they name drop other groups who were nowhere near their level of fame and divert their success to their haters? When asked about style biting or other artists, Wishbone in the 97 Source magazine interview said, "See, that's something we don't even really like to talk about because we know there's a gang of motherfuckers that love Bone that are going to read this. So we choose not to give other motherfuckers fame." This lesson or idea thematically appears in many of the songs throughout the album. For example, Crazy Bone's verses in Look Into My Eyes and Family Tree, and Lazy Bone's verse in Mind of a Soldier. And the final lesson is number 3, forming, organizing, and managing your team or army. Because without teamwork, you're bound to fuck up. Success in any war depends on a well-unified and organized team, and obviously a crucial aspect for Bone Thugs and Harmony is group cohesion and chemistry. A big theme in Bone Thugs The Art of War is about them as a group, their loyalty, and how they have each other's backs and fight for each other. You can even say their style of harmonizing is a way of them being organized together, especially when performing. And finally, the group also had Mo Thugs. Bone Thugs' loyalty extended beyond their group to their community, embodied in the Mo Thugs label, which showcased Cleveland's talent and strengthened their home base. Mo Thugs is mentioned multiple times throughout the album, and the track Mo Family Thug Tree features artists from the label. In the Untold Story, The Art of War tour video, Crazy explains the importance of making sure everything is tight at home.
See, Mo Thug is like an organization and a family, you know what I'm saying? And I'm gonna keep stressing that, you know what I'm saying? Because that's all we about, you know what I'm saying? Looking out for our peoples, making sure everything is tight at home. Because if your home base ain't tight, ain't nothing tight. Everything else is gonna fall.
The other members emphasized the importance of Mo Thug and moving together as one and united as the basis for their success. Many songs on The Art of War, especially those that are more melodic, focus on community. For example, If I Could Teach the World, which is an uplifting song spreading a positive message to their younger fans. They also emphasize standing together. How Many of Us Have Them, Friends, which samples Houdini's iconic Friends, is about Bone Thugs' support for each other, Mo Thug, and friends. But this track also touches on enemies disguised as friends too. And finally, Family Tree Bone, which is one of the more depressing and sentimental songs on the album, features each member opening up about a specific hardship they've been going through while showing support and compassion for each other's struggles. Through these lessons of self-awareness, strategic conflict avoidance, and unity, Bone Thugs crafted The Art of War not just as an album, but as a manifesto for navigating life's battles. Here are the motives throughout the album that help reinforce the themes just discussed. Religion. Despite the dark themes that Bone Thugs rap about, they bring everything back to religion, highlighting that all the struggles they go through with violence, crime, and poverty can be persevered through faith in God. They don't glorify the thug lifestyle, but rather expose the hardships that go with it, revealing that there are always two sides to a story. And what may seem negative to you or the media isn't all that it seems to be. If you listen closely, they do spread a lot of positive messages in their songs, giving their audiences more to think about. Lazy Bone in the 98 Planet Groove interview explained this perfectly.
But I think the overall message is, you know what I'm saying, that we're trying to get across is that, you know what I'm saying, we represent the Lord, you know what I'm saying, God, Jesus Christ, you know, it's like we trying to get everybody to see, even though you're going to have problems, it's going to be bad things that happen to you. It's two sides of everything, you know what I'm saying, you got good, you got bad, God, you got devil. You know what I'm saying? And that's our whole bottom line message. Even though we coming from where we come from, we gonna talk about the streets, we gonna witness what we see, you know what I'm saying? But the whole thing is getting to heaven. If I Could Teach the World revolves majorly around themes of religion and setting good examples. Wishbone's final verse is all about this. Finally, a lot of the lyrics throughout The Art of War reference biblical terms such as Armageddon Day. The Hard Times interlude sounds very religious, and the track Seven Sign, I believe, is a reference to the seven seals of God from the Book of Revelation.
Romans, which relates to the second coming of Christ or the apocalypse. A lot of Busy's and Lazy Bones' verse in general sound very biblical. Horror and the occult. So while faith and spirituality ground the album, Bone Thugs also explore darker imagery through horror and occult references. Horror and the occult are used as dramatic adjectives and descriptors for the graphic stories and situations that Bone Thugs share throughout their songs. They wanted to be as real as possible when describing how brutal their conditions and environments were, revealing that reality can be just as scary as a movie. Some other interesting ways that horror is mentioned are through the members' nicknames. For example, Crazy Bone's alternate nickname is Leatherface, referencing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Lazy Bone is called the #1 assassin, Wishbone, Straitjacket, and Busy Bone, RIP, or the Ripsta. Warfare. One thing you cannot miss while listening through this album is the many times that warfare terms are used. For example, the referencing of calling Bone, Mo Thug, or their friends as troops, the specific guns mentioned, and the music video for If I Could Teach the World also opens with this post-apocalyptic cyber dystopian war scene. I think these themes of war, religion, and like the end of times were further amplified by the Y2K apocalypse theories, which seem to have a really big influence in music in the late 90s. I think this is my third time mentioning this theory in my videos. Police brutality. A handful of songs on the Art of War album are about police brutality and the unfair law system in America. Bone Thugs recount their stories of having to struggle against being targeted by the police, violence, loss, and how they aren't afraid of fighting back if necessary. A lot of these songs reflect the difficulties of being from Cleveland, especially from East 99 and St. Clair, where Bone Thugs are from. Body Rot, which is my favorite song off the album, Clog Up Your Mind, Family Tree, and Let the Law End all focus on this motive. Cleveland, Ohio. This is an obvious motive. Since Bone's debut, they've always mentioned Cleveland, Ohio as much as possible. Their stories, raps, and style all came from their upbringing, and they wanted to bring more attention to the realities of what it's like living in Cleveland. Moving on to the album cover. The beauty of physical media is being able to read things and details up close. I unfortunately don't have any Bone Thugs records because I can't find any that are under $100. Many years ago, I used to own The Art of War World War II on cassette, this bad boy over here, but unfortunately I broke it because I was just a kid. Luckily though, Bone Thugs have a very dedicated fan base, so all the visuals for this album are uploaded online. The first thing I noticed about the cover is that all the members have face paint on except for Busy Bone. I'm gonna take a wild guess and say that they probably had to edit his face in. The cover was designed by Giulio Costanzo, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and I found this post on Instagram where he shared the alternate cover for The Art of War. In the caption, he explains that because Bone actually showed up for their photo shoot, they went with the current cover, but he also added how only 3 members showed up. Like mentioned previously, Busy Bone had problems with Ruthless Records at the time, so he wasn't really present for any of the promotional content outside of just making the music for The Art of War. I don't think he was really present for any performances either. The aesthetics for this album are so late 90s. It reminds me of old RPG fantasy games like Diablo 1 or 2, which would make a lot of sense because in Diablo you are fighting as a warrior against like armies of ghouls and skeletons, and there are similar horror elements as well. The inside CD booklet has this page with each member's weapons corresponding to their nicknames. This page kind of looks like a select weapon screen for a video game. There's also a lot of like mystical RPG like Magic of the Gathering like symbolism and elements throughout the CD booklet. Then there's also this really weird obscure page. Yeah, I don't know what this is. I honestly just think like in the 90s they were just doing shit just to do shit. Like The Art of War joins Bone Thugs' legacy in showing the importance of group dynamics, authenticity, and innovation in lyrical sound and style. The glory of this album is grounded in how they've leveraged their experiences with their signature sound to storytell what they consider to be life's battles. By combining rap and harmonies on dark and light themes, they exemplify that life is all about balance, and that good experiences like success and fame come with bad, like hate, conflict, and misunderstanding. I also think that the beef that Bone Thugs had with 3 6 Mafia and these other groups definitely gets pushed under the rug. Diss tracks were a big trend this year, and the ones that Bone Thugs made, or the ones that were directed towards Bone Thugs and Harmony, were absolutely insane. Even comparing this to Kendrick and Drake's beef, I feel like when I was rereading The Art of War, I was like, Kendrick definitely was doing some of these laws that Sun Tzu mentions in this book. Also, a lot of the hate that Drake gets is because he literally style bites from different regions of America's hip-hop, inauthentic to his own upbringing and roots from Toronto. Kind of the same way that Bone Thugs and their haters kind of accused each other of doing with style biting. So a lot of the themes from this album are still pretty relevant. Anyways, thank you for watching. This is one of my favorite hip-hop albums of all time. Also, Bone Thugs and Harmony were like also like the first hip-hop artists I ever listened to ever in my life. So yeah, a lot of love and memories for this album. Anyways, bye.